On December 19, 1997, James Cameron released Titanic. It became the highest-grossing movie of all time. It taught the world a love story about Jack and Rose. It taught us that the ship sank because of an iceberg and arrogance. But the movie left out the most important part of the story, the part that explains not just 1912, but 2025, the part about money. There is a persistent theory, rejected by mainstream historians, but endlessly fascinating as a parable, that the ship at the bottom of the Atlantic is not the Titanic. It is the Olympic. The White Star Line, controlled by J.P. Morgan, had two ships. The Titanic, new and pristine. The Olympic, older and damaged from a prior collision. The Olympic was uninsurable. It was a broken asset, bleeding money. The theory says they swapped the ships. They painted Titanic on the broken Olympic, sent it out to sea, and planned to sink it to collect the insurance money. The real Titanic would sail on as the Olympic. An insurance scam, a bailout disguised as a tragedy. Is it true? Probably not. What matters is why this story refuses to die, because as a financial allegory, it's brutally useful. Because three very specific men died on that ship: John Jacob Astor, Isidor Straus, Benjamin Guggenheim. These were among the richest men in America, and they were vocal opponents of the creation of a central bank. J.P. Morgan was supposed to be on the Titanic. He canceled at the last minute, claiming illness. He was seen in France days later, perfectly healthy. The ship sank. The opponents died. 1 year later, in 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. Did Morgan deliberately use the disaster to remove rivals? There's no proof, but the sequence is uncomfortable. The loudest opponents of a central bank die at sea, and a year later, the institution they opposed is born. What matters isn't whether this was a scripted plot or an emergent coincidence. What matters is the pattern. When power is concentrated, disasters become asymmetrical opportunities. The connected survive, the unconnected drown. Now let's talk about 2025. The Titanic is the U.S. economy. We are on a ship that is too big to fail. The captain, the president, is asleep at the wheel. The officers, the Federal Reserve, are ignoring the ice warnings. The band, the media, is playing loud music to distract you from the water rushing into the hold. And the lifeboats, there aren't enough lifeboats. Here is the iceberg: $37 trillion in federal debt. A sovereign doesn't default by missing a payment. It defaults by paying you back in money that buys half as much. The Fed suppresses rates to keep the debt rolling. Inflation quietly shaves off the real value of your savings. The iceberg isn't a single crash, it's a slow tear along the hull. We are also steaming toward a second iceberg: geopolitical fracture, fragile supply chains, weaponized energy, and the real possibility of a much larger war. The debt path is mathematical. You can slow it, you can disguise it, but you don't reverse it on a ship this size. Billionaires are building bunkers. Founders are quietly liquidating stock. Central banks around the world are buying physical gold at record pace. You don't need a memo to see the pattern. The people closest to the engine room are quietly moving toward the lifeboats. They are securing their exit while telling you to buy stocks and trust the system. When the Titanic sank, who got out? The first class, the rich, the connected. J.P. Morgan wasn't even on board. Who died? The steerage, the immigrants locked below the decks. The people who believed the brochure that said the ship was unsinkable. The Titanic movie was a tragedy. The reality of Titanic was a case study in how disasters redistribute wealth upward. Hubris, greed, negligence, and in the end, the freezing water didn't care how much money you had in your pocket, unless that money bought you a seat on the boat before the panic started. We are in the final hour of the party. The champagne is still flowing in the first-class lounge. The stock market is at all-time highs, but the engine room is already taking water. Don't listen to the band. Listen to the creaking metal. Don't wait for the captain to give the order to abandon ship. He will never give that order because panic is bad for his reputation. Build your own lifeboat. Your lifeboat is hard assets. Translate at least 10 to 20% of your liquid net worth into assets with no counterparty risk: gold, Bitcoin, land. Your lifeboat is skills. Replace 1 hour of daily doom scrolling with 1 hour of learning a hard skill that's tradable offline. Your lifeboat is a passport. Start the paperwork for a second residency this year, even if you never use it. Optionality is survival. Your lifeboat is a community. Identify the 5 people you'd call in a real crisis and invest time into that circle now. When the ship goes down, your network is your flotation device. The Titanic sank in 2 hours and 40 minutes. The US dollar might take longer, but gravity works the same way. When the unsinkable ship goes down, it creates a vortex that pulls everything nearby into the depths. Most people will stay on deck because the music is still playing. Get clear of the vortex. I am the architect, and I will see you tomorrow.